Hi, I'm Agnes. Welcome to my eclectic channel. I make videos for fun. We've been working on resizing a vintage pattern. Last time we made a sketch, and the next step is to bring in our own measurements. When it comes to taking your measurements, there is two things that are important that they don't often tell you. One is that you want to have on the underwear that you will be wearing with the garment, or if it's an overcoat, whatever you'll be, like if you're making a jacket or a coat, wear the type of clothing that you intend to wear underneath that garment. This will allow you to get the proper ease. And then the other thing is you want to look at what you're trying to achieve. Again, this is to give you an idea of ease. Ease is how tight the garment is. And also it gives you an idea of where to measure, say, the hips. And one more thing, I have an exhaustive list of measurements to make. So one more thing you need to do is to look at the model and look at how different the model is compared to you. So if the narrowest point of your body is not here, let's say you're an apple shape and you don't have a defined waist, it's the narrowest place of your body might be here, or you're very rounded around the shoulders or things like that, then you really need to adapt to you, and you can. If you follow this general method and you take all the measurements, it's going to be more work. But you can take something that is made for like a standard thin woman and make it work for you. That will take some practice, but if you keep at it and you experiment, it's very satisfying. I've made knitting garments for my elderly mother, and that was I could tell it was one of her favorites because she wore them often, and they just fit exactly right, and because that they were customized to an older mother's body. So let's get started with the measurements. So for me, since I'm still fairly young, I look like the model. So usually it's sufficient for me to take a waist measurement and a hip measurement and a bust measurement. And then there's a question of height, and that I usually, since it's for myself, I do fittings. When you're knitting, you can do fittings vertically. You can't easily do fittings horizontally. It's on the needles. That's not going to be right. But the vertical stretch, you can just take the knitting and put it on you and see, oh, okay, time to start the sleeves. If you're making a garment for somebody else and you can't like knock on their door and say, hey, can I try and see how this works? Then you can take the measurements ahead of time. So I'm just going to be demonstrating the basic measurements that I take. So one is around the waist, and remember ease. So this is a fairly fitted jacket, and I'm wearing, and I'm going to go over a summer garment, so I think I'm pretty safe if I just keep it over my winter wear. Here I have layers on, and just take that measurement, but don't like squeeze too much. And then another measurement that we'll need is around the chest. So again, not too tight, but that one is pretty easy. Give it maybe a centimeter of ease. And then for the hip, really look at the model and see where that falls. And I'm not looking at the picture right now, but I'm judging, and I know from 1950 they're pretty short. So probably around here is what I need. So I would be taking this measurement here, and that needs a bit of ease. And then I need two vertical measurements. One of them is from where I want the hem of the shirt to fall to the waist. And then the other one is from the waist to where the widest of the bust occurs. So now we're ready to write down our measurements. Let's record them. So I'm putting what they are for me. And here you have to keep in mind that we're doing just a half of it. It's just the back. So when we measure the entire circumference, for the hips and the waist, we have to take half of what we had. And the rest of them, I didn't make the measurements because since I'm not too different from the model, I know that if I scale from the pattern directly, it will work. But the shoulder to shoulder across the back is one that's important to take if you're making your own from scratch, or if you are very rounded, or overall just you know that clothes generally don't fit well on you when you buy them off the rack. So then it's a sign that you want to measure that. But same for the back of the neck. The armhole height is one that's that will measure just directly. I kind of fudged it earlier. Like there's some vertical measurements that I'm taking, like from the hip to the waist I measured, from the waist to the bust I measured, but for the armhole I'm not bothering. What's the difference? The hip to the waist is where there is a change. We're decreasing. The waist to the bust, there's a change. We're increasing. For the armhole height, we're working straight. So whenever we have an increase or a decrease or increase, there's some planning to do. So we do need to know how long we have. But when you're working straight, you don't need to plan ahead of time. You can just measure on your own body. But again, you can measure ahead of time if you really want to have that. So we're ready to put this on the sketch. One more thing I wanted to mention. When you're taking the measurements it can be a little complex. We have a ribbing at the waist that is meant to bring this in. So you gotta plan for that, because remember that we did the gauge that's done in stockinette. One by one ribbing will be tighter than that. So for my waist, I give it a little more ease. Maybe I'm defeating the purpose of cinching it, but I think it'll work. All right, so let's put our measurements. So for the hips, we want 46 centimeters. For the waist, 34 centimeters. Hip to waist for me is 12 centimeters. Look at that, there's a difference there. I'm short. And then for my bust is 41 centimeters. And then from the waist to the bust is going to be 16 centimeters. And for yourselves, at this point, you might want to start with a clean slate. I've added my measurement with a different color on the same sketch because I kind of like to see the contrast. Keeping in mind that I have a lot of units going on. We've got things in centimeters. When I didn't say anything, there's stitches. We got rows. So I need to be careful about all of that going on. So as a summary, we're here. Now we have the sketch with our own measurements on it. Now we need to bring in our gauge. So what you want to do for this step is you need to grab the yarn that you're going to be using, and look on the packaging. They will write on the packaging. They will suggest a gauge. And this particular yarn that I have here has quite a wide range in terms of the gauge, US 5 size 5 to 9. And that's because it happens to be a stretchy yarn, which is quite rare. So usually it'll be more restricted than that. It will give you a clear suggestion. So you take needles that size and you knit a square. And the standard size for the square is 10 by 10 centimeters, 4 by 4, yeah, 4 by 4 inches. And you want to knit it in stockinette. That's like the base stitch. So start with the suggested needle size. Now if you were trying to match the gauge given on the pattern, which we're not doing, this is where they say go up a needle size, go down in order to achieve the correct gauge. That is not what we're looking for. So in your case, it's going to be more a matter of, is the swatch giving me the type of fabric that I need for this particular project? Is it a winter sweater that you want to be, do you want it to have some body? Does it need to be a little structured? And do you want warmth? In that case, you want a tighter knit. So try to go down in needle size and see what that does. You don't want to get down to the level where you can't work with your yarn anymore, but try. Go down in needle size and see the kind of knit that you get. On the flip side, if you need something that's lighter, maybe for summer, and you want maybe it to drape, maybe you're making a dress or a skirt, then try to go up in needle size. So try a few things and see which type of fabric works well for your project, and then you can measure your gauge. Next time, we're going to transfer this to a new sketch with updated stitch counts. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like.